Hey guys, Sarah here. I'm recording the third and for now probably final of the series of what my opinions are on different prices of corn snakes in 2021. A few weeks ago, I went over the single gene mutations that I saw, and then last week I went over the double gene mutations that I saw and accidentally threw in some triples, but it's fine. And then this week I'm going to go through the rest of the triple gene mutations and the quad gene mutations that I saw available on Morph Market. These are in no particular order, so just sort of letting you know this isn't like from favorite to least favorite. I want to mention that this is just my opinion of the price based on as a breeder or keeper, if I would personally spend this much money on something. If I personally feel like this price is worth it or not. This is not to like shame anyone for their prices. I'm not a like price setter. We're not trying to set prices in the market or anything like that. I was asked to give my opinion on the prices that are out there right now, and I thought that that made a really good video, partially because you guys get to hear my opinion. You might get to learn a little bit of corn snake history, and also you get to see a whole bunch of pretty snakes that I'm going to be putting up on the screen for you guys. Remember, this will probably be your last chance before Christmas, or maybe even last chance before the end of the year, depending on when this video goes out, that to use the code TD30 on my website for 30% off anything that is non-snake. I'm not going to be shipping any snakes in December regardless, so even if the 30% off code went for the snakes, I don't ship snakes in December just because shipping volumes are so high, and there's much higher chance that they're going to be left in a freezing facility somewhere, and I just don't want to deal with that. So regardless, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the video and start with the triple G mutations, and the first one that's on the list is Coral Snow. Coral Snow average price was $190, and I think that that's more than reasonable price. I think that some really good Coral Snows could even go for like $300, $400. So if you see a Coral Snow that you really like and it's under $200, you got a really good price. The next one is Scaleless Caramel Tessera. Now I mentioned Scaleless Caramel was $650 in the last video, and adding the Tessera added more money onto that. So the price for that is $925. I think that's a really good deal. I think that if you are mixing Scaleless and Tessera, and it doesn't matter what else it's mixed with, if you can get a Scaleless plus Tessera plus anything else for under $1,000, I think that's a really good price, because in my head at least, Scaleless and Tessera are both really expensive mutations still, even though they are coming down in price. Like I remember when Tesseras were hundreds of dollars just by themselves. So to see anything that's Tessera plus something else to be under $1,000, I think is a good price, especially when you add Scaleless to that. Peppermint Sunkiss. So I didn't even mention Peppermint in the last video because there weren't any on Morph Market at the time. But Peppermint Sunkiss selling for $500. I think that all of that, I think $500 is a good price. Peppermint, anything with Cinder tends to keep its value pretty well. And I really like anything that's mixed with Sunkissed. So this is essentially going to be an amel shatter. If you know, Cinder mixing with Sunkissed causes like that shattery pattern. So the pattern is really cool and unique. Plus you're adding amel to make it a peppermint. So you're going to get this shattered pattern with the red on white, and that is really cool looking snake. So for $500, absolutely, I think that's a good price. Butter Sunkissed, $160. I mentioned in the last couple of videos, pretty much, almost, with a couple of exceptions, but almost everything Sunkissed has just gone for dirt cheap this year, and I think that's crazy. Butter, I feel like a butter by itself is worth like $150 to $160, and I feel like if you add Sunkissed, that should be at least a $200 to $250 snake. That's my opinion. So I kind of feel like $160 is like half the price this should be. So in my opinion, if you see a butter Sunkissed for $160, I think that's a really good price. But I'm also kind of biased because I love anything caramel and I love anything Sunkissed. So when those two things are together, I think that they're worth everything. The next one on here is Coral Ghost for $125. I thought that was pretty cheap, honestly. That's an average price, so some of the Coral Ghosts were cheaper, some were more expensive. I would consider a really high-end Coral Ghost, again, to go for, you know, $200, $300. So, like, I think 125 is actually pretty cheap. So if you see one for that, I think that's a good price. Honey Tessera. So honey is a combination of caramel and sunkissed. Again, two of my favorite things. Um, plus Tessera, 175. Again, I think that's really, really cheap. I think that the adding the Tessera onto that, it should be more like 250. So yeah, I think that's a really good price. But again, I am biased, so just remember that. Butter Tessera, 150. I still think the Tessera, anything is worth more than that. So again, I feel like that's more like a $200 snake. So I feel like that's a good price, but that's just me. Ultramel Anery Tessera, 150. Again, this needs to be more. I sold my regular Ultramel Aneries for 150 this year. So I feel like that, again, should be at least a $200 snake. But here we are. And I also really love anything Ultramel, especially Ultramel Aneries. So I'm also biased in this regard as well. Like all of these things I'm wholly biased on. Butter Motley, 150. Now this makes more sense, especially more than like Butter Tessera going for 150, because I feel like Motley is not worth quite as much as Tessera, just in general. And so Butter Motley for 150, I feel like that's a reasonable price for a Butter Motley. Snow Tessera, 155. Again, I feel like that could be maybe not a $200 snake since it's more of a common combination, but you know, at least like 175 or something. Like I feel like a Snow Tessera should be worth more than 155. Snow Motley is the next one, 150. Again, I think that's a good price, similar to the Butter Motley. I feel like, and like maybe they could go for more than that. And here's the thing: I'm coming from a frame of mind of like just a few years ago. I couldn't sell a snow for more than like $40. A snow was $40, like in 2016 or 2017, maybe even into 2018. Like so, not that long ago. I couldn't, you know, to think about selling a Snow Motley for 150 was absurd. Even thinking about selling an Amel for 120 was absurd. Like, you did not even consider doing that because that was like a crazy out of this world price for that kind of stuff. But now, single gene mutations are going for 100. The price is really up in corn snakes this year. So, you know, if you have just an anery going for 100 to 115 or so, then you add Amel onto that. That should go for at least like 150. And then if you add another gene mutation onto that, it should be at least 175 or, 200, something like that. So to see a Snow Motley for 150, like now, it seems like a good price. But if you would have asked me if 4 years ago, if I would have spent 150 on a Snow Motley, I would have said, you're out of your mind. And maybe I'm just showing my age or something, like my corn snake community age. I don't know. But yeah, so at least for this market right now, I think that Snow Motley for 150 is a really good price. The next one is a Ghost Tessera. And average price 150. Again, I feel like this is another one that really should be like a $200 snake at least, especially with the market right now. The next one, even more surprising to me, Opal Tessera. Now, I would figure Opal Tessera would be more like a $250 snake. But 145 was the average price for Opal Tesseras. And if you don't know, Opal is amelanistic and lavender. Lavender is one of those that typically holds its value pretty well. But to see Opal Tesseras average $140, I thought that was cheap. I thought that it should be $100 more than that, personally. But that's just me. I also, I really like opals. I don't breed any lavender stuff anymore, just because it's just not a project that, for one, there is a higher likelihood that they will kink, or at least that's what I hear. And I don't know. I didn't want to risk it, and when I had to move, I narrowed down a bunch of projects, and I am down to like 3 main projects that I am sticking with, and lavenders just were not a part of that. So, but regardless, I really do like lavenders, and a lot of people like lavenders, and so to see a lavender plus a tessera, sell for what I think just a regular tessera should sell for, it seemed very cheap. I thought that was very cheap. That's my long-winded way of saying 145 is cheap for that. Butter Stripe is the next one for 150. I feel like that could be more than that. I accidentally in the last video talked about Snow Stripe, which should have been on this side. But Snow Stripes also were only selling for about 130. So I guess that Butter Stripe being 150, it kind of makes sense if you compare the two. I generally feel like stripes are worth more than that, though. I would say a Butter Stripe is more like a $175 type of thing. So the next one on the list is a lemon, which is the combination of Hypo, Caramel, and Sunkissed. That goes for $175, which I think that makes sense. I mean, I do think that maybe it could be bumped up to $200. So I think that that's actually a good price. Again, Hypo doesn't really add that much to that whole combination. It just makes it a slightly lighter colored. So I think it kind of, obviously it depends on, you know, how much money you'd want to spend. I probably wouldn't spend that much money on that, but I don't think that it's not that that's not worth that much. It's just that I probably wouldn't spend that much money on it. Saffron, similar. So it's Sunkissed, Amel, and Caramel for Saffron. And those are $175. Similar thing. I do think, again, that could potentially be bumped up to $200. But $175 I think is a pretty decent price for that. I don't know if I would buy. I might buy one for that. It really depended on if it fit into my projects, but I think that they look really cool, both lemons and saffrons. Hypo Lavender Motley, $250 on average, which is not like, I guess it's a little bit higher than expected because Hypo Lavender by itself was only selling for about $180 on average. So to see the $250 just by adding Motley, I felt like that was kind of a big jump. But I felt like Hypo Lavender by itself needed to be more money anyway. So I feel like Hypo Lavender Motley, especially if it's a really nice looking one, $250, I think that's a pretty good price. Phantom is the next one, which is Hypo and Charcoal. And I don't know why this is in this list. This was supposed to be in the last one. But Phantom's only $95, which I was really surprised because Charcoals went for $180. So Phantom's being that cheap, I thought that was unusual. I think that's really, really cheap for a Phantom, especially this year. I think that you could easily pay at least $150 and get a Phantom. Like $150 is probably what I would have maybe charged for them this year. So yeah, I think that's a good price for that. Blue Motleys, $185. And I don't know really the prices of dilute. I don't know really what dilute goes for, but I do think that since dilute is not that common, a Blue Motley being $185, I think that's a really good price. I would probably, if I wanted to get into that project and get into dilute, I would gladly spend $185 on one of my starter project snakes. Mandarin Blood Red. Mandarin is one I haven't mentioned yet because there weren't any on Morph Market. Mandarin is Castagna and Amel, and then obviously we're adding Blood Red or Diffused. And those were $500. To me, that makes sense. Castagna is another one that's really not that common, and mandarins are beautiful. Like mandarins, like I can't, in my brain imagine a mandarin being more beautiful than, at least for me, than like a Hypo Amel, like just look like an Amel. But they really stick out. Like I think they're gorgeous. A lot of people call them tangerine too. That's another term for them. I think that Mandarin Blood Reds being $500, I think that is a reasonable price to set. I don't know if I would maybe spend that much money. That's probably one of those instances where if I wanted to get into that project, I'd probably wait a year or two to see if the price went down. But the price on almost everything went up this year. So, you never know when the price is going to go up or down. Now, that's pretty much it for the triples. I'm going to move on to the quads, and there's not very many of them, so maybe we'll keep this under 20 minutes this time. So, Coral Snow Tessera, average price $240. I think that's cheap. I've seen just regular Coral Snows and no Tessera going for at least $240, $250, somewhere around in there, maybe more than that, sometimes up to $300. I think that $300 would be a lot for just a Coral Snow, but adding that Tessera, I think that is worth at least $300. So if you see a Coral Snow Tessera for $240, I think that's a good price. Amber Tessera Blood Red, which is kind of a lot. So obviously we have our Tessera and our Blood Red, which that combination by itself sells for kind of a lot of money, or at least I think it should. I think it should. But then adding the Amber, which is the Caramel and Hypo, $200. I think that's cheap. especially with the Tessera and the Blood Red in there. I think that a Tessera Blood Red by itself should be about $200, at least with our current prices. Adding Amber onto that adds a lot more value to me. So I think that if you see Amber Tessera Blood Red for $200, I personally think that's a good price. And last but not least, Gold Dust Tessera Blood Red, which in my opinion is going to be worth kind of a lot, because I feel like Tesseras are worth a lot just because they're Tesseras. I think that Blood Red holds their value really well, and Gold Dust is caramel and ultramel, which is like my favorite combination of all time. So personally, I would value a Gold Dust Tessera Blood Red at more like $350, and this is selling for $250 on average. So I personally think it's a good price, and especially with Gold Dust, like this is actually Gold Dust, almost like $5, because the ultramel is technically amel and ultra. So even though I didn't put it, I put it as if it was $1, but whatever. Anyway, I think that it's worth at least $250. So I think that if you see a Gold Dust Tessera Blood Red for $250, that's a really good price. That is all I have for this video series, at least for now. So if you guys have other ones that you specifically want me to look up, please feel free to put those in the comments. It doesn't matter if they're singles, doubles, triples, whatever, or even just something simple as Alabama or Miami. Whatever you want to hear about, let me know in the comments down below. And again, remember, I do have that 30% off with TD30 till the end of the year. So even if you missed it for Christmas, if you have a little extra Christmas money and you want one, that 30% off is still going to be available until the end of the 2021 year. And 2022 is right around the corner, which is crazy. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.